Welcome to Fintech, What the Heck? I'm your host, Andrew Carpenter. This is the podcast all about fintech and the future of data. Today, I'll be talking about what to look for in a data provider. I'll also be covering how to grow your business through partnerships with Intrinio's Director of Business Development, Steele Barcomb. And I'll be talking to the CEO of Transparent Traders, James Mason, about how he applied technology to swing trading and built his investment community. Some of my guests today will be talking about business development and finding data providers and how you would go about doing that. And so on my ramble today, I figured I would talk a little bit about data providers from my perspective. I've been working with data providers, and I've been a data provider for the better part of a decade now, mostly at Intrinio. And along the way, we get asked the same kinds of questions all the time. Like, why would we go through a data provider? Aren't they just a middleman? Why not go to the source directly ourselves? Or, like, what is the difference between data providers? There are just tons of choices out there. I can think of 6 different marketplaces of data. There's big fish like Amazon and Snowflake that have their own data marketplaces and are focusing on fintech now. There's a lot of smaller players out there, medium players. You've got IEX Cloud, NASDAQ and Quandl teamed up, launched a cloud. Refinitive's over at LSE now, London Stock Exchange. There's other providers, Ignite, all over the place, Polygon, and Intrinio. So what's the difference between all these different providers? Why would you need one? What's a good provider? What's a bad provider? And I'll just start with one word in a data provider, and it's dependability. So everything that I'm going to talk about today, all the different reasons why you would go with a data provider, they get to dependability. And the first place where dependability matters is the answer to the question, why even get a data provider? Why not do it yourself? So Intrinio specializes in U.S. fundamentals data, both standardized and as reported. That's open source data. You can just go get it from the SEC's website. It's publicly available and it's free. If you have a server, you got to pay for it to go scrape and pull that data down, but the SEC has tools to allow you to do that because you're supposed to. So why not just go do it yourself? It would be free. Why pay someone for that data that's publicly available? And for SEC data, the answer to that question is dependability. If you get the data from the SEC, what happens if the SEC changes things on you, which they do on a very regular basis? They might change how the data is accessed. They might throttle you so you can't get the data anymore. They might change a URL. Different companies' data might be filed differently on the SEC website, and these changes are happening all the time. So you could go out and you could start scraping, say, 1,000 or 5,000 or 10,000 companies' data from the SEC, but with that many companies and the SEC not charging you, giving it away for free, they're going to change things on a daily basis. So maybe not every day a company makes a change to how its data can be accessed at the SEC, but every few years for most companies. And so what that amounts to are lots and lots of changes. So the code that you go and write to pull that data down is going to break. It's going to break on a very regular basis. It's not going to be dependable. Your server maintenance might go down. The SEC might cut you off, throttle you, change the rules for how that's accessed. It actually becomes kind of a full-time job just to get that data. And you need to hire someone. Okay, well now how much are you going to pay that person to dependably and reliably get the fundamentals? Intrinio has a team that does this. And using fundamentals as an example, you can quickly see how you actually aren't going to save any money if you go and get that data yourself straight from the source. The same is true pretty much regardless of the data source. If your business depends on that data, you need someone there to make sure that that data is dependable. Some sources are more dependable, some are less, but none of them are perfectly dependable. So unless you have someone on your staff who at 1 a.m. can get alerted, hey, our data stopped coming in, your platform might go offline. Unless you have someone that sits between you and the data, whose job it is to make sure that that data stays online and that data is dependably available for you. So that's a question we get all the time because we provide SEC data. But you might be looking for stock prices or real-time data from an exchange, and the same thing applies. You can go to the data center where a stock exchange whose data you want is located. You can physically put a server in there and connect it to yours. And now you're not paying a middleman, but now you got to go maintain that server when it goes offline. You got to buy the server. You got to make sure that it's plugged in and dusted off and someone's put gas in it. So it's pretty easy to see why you would want to choose a data provider, unless your business is gathering data, unless you want to be a data provider yourself, in which case I'll see you in a decade, you'll be like me, your hair will be going gray, and you'll be worrying about all the data that's out there. So first piece of advice I could give you if your business needs data, work with the data provider. The small fees that they charge you, or the monthly fees or the annual fees, are well worth it, because the alternative is to hire a dev. So speaking of devs, let's talk about, once you get connected to that data provider, onboarding the data. You are going to be building some app or platform or tool for your company, tool for your users, some sort of tool maybe even for yourself, and you're going to go to that data provider and you're going to get that data from them that you're paying them to license and to maintain for you, to make it available and all that. So immediately you're 10 steps ahead, because you have that data provider. They're going to give you the data in some nice, easy to access format. Now what? You have to integrate it into your system, and that in itself is a big job. Data providers, if they're good, will provide software development kits, documentation. Intrinio provides bulk downloads, Snowflake access, FTP, Amazon access. We work with partners, so you can get our data in a lot of ways. Maybe you want it as a CSV download, or you want it as a REST API or streaming API. A good data provider will have lots of access methods, because if you have to go to an access method that is outside of what you're comfortable with, what your team can do, what works best for you, it's very expensive. You got to build something new, and the main cost that goes into onboarding a data set is in that developer, that expert that you have either on your team or hired to integrate that data into whatever system you're using to bring it into your database or display it on your website. There's someone who builds that connection to the data provider. And oftentimes, and actually almost always in my experience, that person and having them on your team is more expensive than the data itself. So if it takes a long time for that person to do the integration, there's a lot of waiting, back and forth, hemming and hawing, something doesn't work right, you're actually spending more money having that person do the integration than for the data itself. That's a problem. It slows down the launch of your business. So one thing that I would recommend in a data provider is talking to them about their onboarding process. What we do is we assign a developer, a sales engineer, account manager, and salesperson all to your account. And that developer can get on the phone with you, even on a Zoom call, and go through and show you how to connect, make sure that it's working, answer your questions that your developer has, and do it in real time, either on the phone, text message, chat. We have all kinds of ways that you could talk to our team. And we do that because we know that one of the biggest costs is that integration. So something to consider in cars, they call that total cost of ownership. It's not just the cost to buy the data or the cost to buy the car. It's also the oil changes, the maintenance, insurance, all these other things that go into using that car or using data in our case. And onboarding is actually, in the first year or two, usually the biggest expense. So work with a provider that can make that easier for you, and it'll actually save you money in the long run. A good example of that is like with our data. You can query our data repeatedly. You can query like a REST API over and over, or you could update the data every 5 minutes, say. But if that data only updates daily, updating it every 5 minutes doesn't get you anywhere. It just costs. It costs you money to transfer data, to make the queries, to run your servers, and our team can actually help you and advise you, oh, when should I be updating this? How often? What's the most efficient way to architect it? And that'll cut down the total cost of ownership of that data set that you want to use for years to come. So the next thing that I'll mention about working with a data provider is support. There's a lot of platforms out there that are self-service, and that's great. You can sign up and take a trial and buy something without talking to anyone, which if you're a developer might be stressful or scary if you've been quarantined for the last couple of years. And a lot of the time people love that. They love the speed of that. And we used to only do that at Intrinio. We used to allow you to self-sign up, and you could just buy your data subscription in a checkout kind of format. But usually when a data provider is doing something like that, allowing self-sign up, they're betting that they can sign up thousands of customers, which is great. You're going for this big scale, lower price, low friction, get this big ecosystem of all these people using your data. And we used to be like that, so I know why you would think that. It's like, wow, we're going to be the winning provider, we're going to be the unicorn, everyone's going to want to buy data from us, we're going to serve everyone and democratize the data, get it in everyone's hands. That's great if your data is perfect and everything goes perfectly for your users. If your users are businesses, though, and they run into problems, you are kind of out of luck, because usually when you go for big scale, like a big cloud platform, like some of the ones that are available now, and you have thousands and thousands of customers, those customers aren't going to be able to file tickets. They're not going to be able to chat with the support specialist. They're not going to be able to call, for God's sakes, and talk to a real human being. No way. It would never work, because you'd get so many phone calls that you'd have to raise your prices. And so one piece of advice that I would have for data buyers that are looking to work with a partner is to find out how their support system works. Do they have thousands of customers or hundreds? If they have thousands, then your problems that you might have with the data, whether it's data quality, connection, uptime, anything like that, your problems aren't going to be really a priority. You're going to get directed to like a knowledge base with articles, like help articles that you can read and support yourself, or maybe there's a community and other users are supporting you. It'd be like if all the people going to get an oil change decided they were going to do the oil change in the lobby there together. Well, they're not really the experts. They've got their own problems. So one thing that I would advise strongly is going with a data provider that actually supports the data. And what do you need support for? It's data quality errors. Maybe there's a problem in the data or you have a question about the data. How is this calculated? When does this update? Those are common questions regardless of the data provider, regardless of the data quality that you're going to run into, is that there are issues. Or maybe your connection goes down, or something changes, or you're a little bit lost and you have these kinds of issues. That's what support's for. It's there to make it so that you're not spending a lot of time trying to figure things out. You can talk to an expert who can help you and keep your business running, because your business isn't being a data provider. It's not collecting that data, cleaning it, answering questions about it. Your business is something else that you need that data for, and you should be focusing there. If you have that support, you can focus there. You can focus on customer acquisition, how you display that data, innovative designs, innovative investment strategies, whatever it is. But if you're trying to figure out support, you're less likely to be successful. So I would go with a platform that provides that support and test it. Just send in a ticket while you're on your free trial, or talk to their chat, or say to your salesperson, can I get your cell phone number? And send them a text message. I love helping customers over text because it's not distracting. You can actually give them a hand, and we do a lot of that in Intrinio because we know that your problems are emergencies to you, and so we try to treat them like emergencies to us as well. The last thing I'll talk about when choosing a data provider is account management. When I started out in the data business, I didn't really think account management was a thing for data. Like, why would I need an account manager? And the reason why you need an account manager from a customer standpoint is because all this stuff, onboarding the data, filing tickets, asking about the dependability of the data, talking to a developer. These are usually different departments at the data provider. And in Intrinio, we have a support department, we have a data quality department, we have a development department, sales department. Maybe you have questions about new data sets you want to add. Well, that's too much for me to navigate as a customer. So what your account management professional does is they help you navigate the infrastructure of the data provider you're working with. So you have one person to ask for help instead of trying to figure out, I should be talking to all of these different people. And from the business standpoint at Intrinio, having account management is helpful because that account manager is always on the lookout for when customers need new data sets, because it's an opportunity for us to add new data for that customer and start the whole process over again from the beginning of looking for data from a data provider. And that whole process in and of itself, searching for a data provider, is exhausting. If you've ever done it, you've come across, there's all these different data providers and solutions and platforms out there. Maybe my account manager can help me navigate all of that because they've been doing it for years. And my business and my expertise isn't in searching through different marketplaces and trying to figure out how good these different providers are. My business is something else. It's, processing or investing or whatever it is. An account manager can help you to say, all right, let's go. I need this type of data. Who do you recommend I talk to? Where should I go? Can you do it? Can someone else do it? Who should I avoid? What would be a good source of that data? So that's all about picking data providers and why you should be focused on dependability in those data providers. You aren't a data provider yourself. Don't try to be one, and look for a data provider who can get rid of that initial processing burden from your company, help you onboard the data more efficiently, and support you as you go through that process with ticketing, chat, calls, whatever support mechanism works for you. And then also try to find one that has account management, because they're going to make your life a lot easier and eventually let you focus on building whatever it is you set out to build when you decided you needed data.
I have Steele Barcomb with me today. He is the Director of Business Development at Intrinio. Thanks for coming to the podcast, Steele.
Thanks, Andrew. Appreciate you having me today.
Yeah, our pleasure. Why don't you just tell our audience a little bit about who you are, how you came to work at Intrinio?
Because I always was just really enjoyed the problems that you face within the financial world. I mean, if you think about everything from a fundamental basis, everybody and anything you do is really focused around the financials of whether you're lending, whether you're doing your internal accounting, or even from an investment standpoint. And so I actually started out as doing that, and then fast forward a few years later, I actually started my own prop trading firm with a few other traders, and was a active trader. We traded equities, options, futures contracts for about 7 years, and then after doing that and kind of going through the whole gauntlet of being a trader and learning how you can develop gray hairs at an early age, I decided that I'd go back to business school, get my get an MBA and focus on finance, and kind of really develop myself on more of the on the actual business development side of things. And I took a couple classes there, and obviously Fintech at the time was kind of a new and kind of growing sector within finance. And I did a project that had to do with Business Insider or Harvard Business School, and we did a couple of their journals on a few companies, and I was just like, wow. And one of them was PayPal, and just how revolutionary they kind of came up with a whole new concept of how payment processing worked. And I was like, wow, this is really cool in a really cool space. And so just thought Intrinio's got some pretty cool stuff going on. And so fast forward 3 years later, I'm here and selling data.
Yeah. So you've got business experience, trading experience, investing experience, and you just wanted to be in this space. Now you're sitting here after a few years of business development. And I think that's a topic or a title that is very confusing. It's not like, I'm a software developer or I'm a marketer. I can understand what your job would be and what you're trying to accomplish. So how do you think about business development? And more specifically, business development in a data industry? What does that even mean?
Yeah, it's funny. Business development is just one of those such a generalized term that it could mean almost anything within a business, right? At any given point in time, regardless of the industry you're in, business development is everything. You're always trying to generate more business, right? If you're not generating more business, you're not doing, you're not growing as a company. So the title has always been kind of like, just go out and generate business, right? Business development. And so that could be sales, that can be, strategic partnerships, just kind of how do you navigate that specific industry to make more relationships and make more money for your firm. So, from our perspective, the financial data world can be, pretty confusing. There's a lot of integral, parts. There's a lot of bigger vendors, smaller vendors. Everybody kind of works together at the same time, competes together against each other. So, from our point of view, business development is really about focusing on what we can do to generate more exposure for the Intrinio market or Intrinio products. And strategic partnerships, working with other vendors, other people that maybe specialize in data that complements what we do is really important, and getting exposure to other user bases. There's always, companies are always looking for the new and cutting edge data quality or alternative data sets. So it's important to not only want to stay in the space and see what everybody else is working on, but also, having those partnerships and being able to cross sell within the industry is really important. And so, we've been able to, use that kind of business development department to go out and find other companies to work with. And that's kind of what, the primary responsibilities of the BD department is just really going out and understanding, one, what are some of the, ways we can get exposure to our products outside of our traditional marketing, our marketing initiatives or our marketing strategies. And then two, developing relationships with other firms to, create more value for not only the end user, but obviously generate business for both.
I see. So it's like a whole nother channel of places where you can find customers, but you find them through your partners. What is that like? If you're doing business development, you're signing partnership agreements and you're working with other companies, they're introducing you to clients, maybe you're introducing them to clients. What's that experience like for the clients? Like if you're an Intrinio client, Intrinio has these business development relationships, or a partner has a client and they're interested in Intrinio, find them through that partnership. How do the customers experience that? Is it a positive thing for them? Does it make their lives easier, or is it just kind of like a confused model for them?
Yeah, it's an interesting, it's interesting because a lot of the players in the space, unless you really are integrated and really even worked with the data partner or data providers out there, it's a really tough space to navigate. You just, everybody kind of, there's a lot of competing products. You're not sure who, is the best person to talk to, or, what companies are able to provide the right solution for you. And so it can be pretty daunting if you're kind of a newcomer in this space, regardless if you're working for a larger firm or maybe you're just, you started a new firm. And so everybody's like, the main question I always get asked is like, can you help me, find this data? Or like, we really don't want to be working with 25 different people and navigating and negotiating all these contracts, really just looking for a centralized location, somebody to like help us navigate the space. And so that extra value add that we provide, it's like, we know the right people to talk to, we know the right people to get the right data that you need, but also, the best data quality out there. Let us help you and navigate that space by, making those introductions, facilitating the sales process for you. And even at some points, like, let's do the billing, we can help you with, centralizing your billing, which can be really important, especially when you have multiple different data sets that you're working with. And so a lot of times the customer, the feedback is very positive. They're always looking to work with people who understand the space better and can obviously, simplify the process. At the end of the day, it's always about how you streamline anything and make it, more seamless for everybody, for your firm to use. Obviously time is a big factor, right? So everybody, kind of always appreciate it, especially if you can put them in touch with the right people to get them exactly what they need at the right time.
I see. So like if you're working with a company that doesn't have a business development department, you're just talking to that company. It's very limited. And then as the data buyer, you're going to have to go talk to every company individually. It's very time consuming. But if those companies have relationships and know who each other are and their strengths and weaknesses, do you think that by having that business development function, it actually saves the customer money because they they can go to that single source, like that time savings? You think it actually is good ROI for the clients?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's so many different things that go into, the purchasing process for a new data set. Like if we're talking like specifically, let's use an example as like real-time data. If you spend the time to not only underwrite and vet a new data provider, that can take days, weeks, even months, to really narrow down on a few accurate providers of what you're looking for. But at the same time, like the integration process and with even testing new data sets can be very daunting and obviously very time consuming. And obviously developers time is can be quite expensive. And so there's a whole process that, before you even make a decision on purchasing a data set, that can obviously there can be costs associated with that. And so it's really important to understand, like, one, the providers you're working with and making sure that, not only from they make sense from a pricing side, but also, the quality of the service you're getting. You can put yourself very easily in a position where you've integrated a data set with a provider on a trial, some type of a trial agreement, only to find out, down the road that not only one, that maybe that solution doesn't really work for what you're looking to accomplish, or the data quality isn't there, or the customer service isn't there, but you've already spent the money, time, and energy to integrate that data set. And so there's a lot of obstacles you really got to look at when you're looking at consuming another data set from a provider, because there's just so much back end costs that go with it when you're talking about actually integrating these data sets.
Yeah, it's the total cost of ownership isn't just licensing the data. It's the people you hire to test the data and the infrastructure and the server costs and on and on. And it can just kill you if you're going on a one-off hunt for data instead of talking to someone who's already got all that experience. What makes a good data partner? Like if you're looking to do BD, business development, find new partnerships and relationships, like the same thing, like some of that could be a wild goose chase for you, I'm sure. Like, what is it about some partners that make them great to work with? And how could a company that wants to get into BD and use that as a way to generate new business, what kind of things should they be doing so that other companies want to work with them?
Yeah, it's a really good question. There's a lot of different factors that go into play. I think the number one is the overall transparency that they provide to clients. A lot of the times, most of the times a client comes to us, a prospect comes to us, they want to get as much information up front as possible. They're obviously in discovery stage, so they want to, talk to a few different providers, see what they're about, see what's going on. They don't want to go through a ton of hoops in order to actually get clarity on one, what is the integration process looks like? Obviously, what is the pricing? And so it's really important from a data provider standpoint to really kind of focus in on wanting to win business and be aggressive and also transparent on their process. You'd be surprised how many players in the space out there really kind of try to, make it difficult for the, end user to really get all the information up front before making a decision on purchasing, a product. And so from our point of view, it's really about, one, can you provide this information to our client in a timely manner, and making sure that they have all the information they need to making a purchasing decision for a product. Obviously, one thing we really strive here at Intrinio is transparency and keeping everything open and allowing our clients to have access to as much information as possible before you making that purchasing decision. And so I think that's the biggest deciding factor for us is, one, the capabilities of the data provider from that point of view. Customer service is a big factor too. And also the data quality. I mean, the one thing that can really hurt you within this space is, from a reputation standpoint, is if you actually, sell somebody a product and the data quality just really wasn't there from the get-go. It can be very detrimental to a firm. Not only from, maybe they're making investment decisions based off that information. If it's bad information, not only are you losing a ton of money in that decision if it goes the wrong way, but you just spent all this time, energy, and money. Back to my, comments on the integration side, it's you got to understand the product really before you you dive full, head first into it. So that part can be really challenging and very daunting. And so that is another big factor that we always try to make sure that we're on the same page with another data provider is like, what kind of what's your trial process look like? Are you able to give access to your data to clients before they purchase? Obviously, depending on the data set, it's really tough, right? So it makes that process a little bit more customizable based off who's the provider and what data they're giving. But at the end of the day, it really all depends on one, customer service, data quality, and transparency.
Yeah, that makes so much sense because you're trying to connect those clients, save them time, save them money, and if the partner is super forthcoming about trial periods, cost, it's going to make that client's experience a lot easier. They actually don't waste a lot of time then up front evaluating if they should take a trial. Why do you think so many companies are hesitant to be transparent, to provide good customer service? Like I'm thinking about traditional vendors, like the big players in the space. Like why is their data confusing? Why is it hard to work with them? Like why would they obfuscate their pricing and make it hard to find? Like what's the benefit for them to doing that?
Yeah, it's funny because you think of some of the more traditional players in the space. It's still in that phase of we need NDAs, we need assurances that you're not going to take our information, steal it, or like go create a competing product. It's funny too because a lot of the times the tech decks there are just not anywhere near like some of the newer players in the space. Just from a delivery standpoint, I think it's just based off a more traditional model of just enterprise sales, and not having the understanding of like where the market is going, and how much access becoming more readily available is access to data. So it's an interesting question. I don't really have a definitive answer on that. I just think there's a lot of different things that go into it. One is just I think they're just trying to hold on for dear life.
Yeah, there's a lot of fear. They're motivated by preventing bad things from happening rather than making good things happen. And that's hard to partner. It's hard to work. I mean, anybody, partner, client, whatever, that can be a real challenge because the data is so complicated and confusing to begin with. So it makes perfect sense to me.
And it's interesting too because you have these situations where if you rewind the tape a little bit. Let's say it's late '90s, early 2000s. The people who are actually working on data projects that require data. A lot of the times it was that in those times you didn't have a lot of startups with smaller budgets or had access to the infrastructures in order to really compete with larger institutions on developing these new fintech products. If you think about, just the, access to more developer talent, for example, I mean, there's just, that has become such a high demand now. And there's so many more companies that need access to this information that are just not on the same level as your traditional financial institutions. And so that right there is, there's, a lot more companies out there that maybe not have the higher price point budget wise for the data. And so, from a legacy, from the traditional, bigger financial data providers, I think that's just kind of part of the whole game, right? Is not having the understanding of how some of these newer innovative companies work. They're more flexible in the sense like whether they're willing to move fast, they don't have the, the hierarchy for decision making, but it's, maybe they're at a lower price point than some of your, bigger financial institutions.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. All right, well, let's talk a little bit about your work life outside of business development. I mean, you're doing sales, you're managing your calendar, you're working remotely, you're on Zoom 24/7. How are you keeping yourself sane and managing email, calendar, all this, talking to clients and staying responsive, providing good customer service? I think everybody, no matter where they work, is probably overwhelmed by all of that. Like, how do you succeed? How do you keep yourself from being overwhelmed and stay focused on those clients and partnerships?
Oh man, how much time do you got? We could spend an hour on this segment alone. It's really interesting. I think when the pandemic hit and everybody was really, going fully remote, kind of hit everybody, kind of a shock period, like shock and awe period, where it was like everything just fully went to what is your you're really just living off your calendar and, making sure that, you can structure yourself accordingly. Biggest thing I do is I try to be my own boss in a fact where it's like being disciplined on how, you keep your calendar and making sure you stick to your calendar. It's very easy to kind of go off going off the beaten path and just kind of, winging it every day. Obviously you're scheduling calls, making sure that, you're not just scheduling calls at will, but really structuring yourself in a way where you can not only do, have your, your schedule set up where you're taking all your calls, you're listening to, either BD calls, sales calls, whatever it may be, but also, setting time aside for work or other things that you really are passionate about, whether it's like meditating, even taking lunch. Obviously in the startup world, that can be a little difficult. But just even like putting it on your calendar, being like, hey, you need to do, this is busy work time, or this is, sales call time, can be really important because, especially when you're talking about, working with a clientele that's international, you're constantly working with conflicting time zones. And so, when you're talking to people in the morning, that may be their afternoon, or your afternoon, they may be their morning. It could be really, you could very easily schedule yourself, right through lunch and into dinner. Right. So, self-discipline on that end is really important. I like to try to take as many, mental breaks as I can between calls, whether that's just digesting what's going on, or, taking notes and doing the proper due diligence follow-ups. So my strategy has been, ever since the pandemic kind of hit, was trying not to do as many back-to-back calls as possible. That way it gives you time not only to be flexible on any if you run over, or, just being able to reflect on the call. Because if you kind of bounce in between calls, it's really hard to digest what happened on a call, or even do like your proper notes or follow-ups afterwards. So, I think just self-discipline and understanding that, if you live by your calendar, then, make sure you, kind of keep it as, disciplined as possible.
I love that. Yeah, I like that. It's almost like you have to force yourself not to work constantly because you're mistaking movement for action. So Don't be constantly busy. Don't be constantly on calls, because otherwise what's the point of the calls? There has to be some sort of follow-up from those meetings. And you have to block the time so that you can actually do it, and then have the discipline to stick to it. So that's awesome. All right, last question. Do you think Top Gun's release is going to get pushed back again, or is it actually going to come out this fall?
Man, that's a good question. There's a running bet going on if I'm going to get married first, or if this Top Gun 2 thing's going to come out. I don't know. It could be 2025, but by the time that thing comes out, we'll see. But I know that the recent update is now May 22nd, I think, for 2022, which is, I think, the same time a couple other movies. Yeah, a couple other movies are going to be coming out. So I think it's going to get pushed back even further. So who knows?
Well, that's hard. I'm sure our listeners are suffering.
Yeah, it's a tough pill to swallow. It's been an ongoing thing now for over a year. So we'll see.
Bummer. Well, thanks so much for being here, Steele. We really appreciate you coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Today I'm with James Mason, the creator of Transparent Traders. Transparent Traders offers an advanced black box that uses custom algorithms and predictive AI to locate the most accurate day or swing trades. Thanks for joining us, James.
Andrew, thank you for having me.
Can you just start off by telling us a little bit about your background and how you came to create Transparent Traders?
So I started trading in January of 2012. Actually on the continent of Antarctica at McMurdo Station. I started off working for the government as a contract firefighter / medic, and I was down there with a lot of people who actually had backgrounds in finance. And I kind of came in already with an interest in the stock market, and they actually just propelled me with my interest even more. got me into trading, which ended up horrible in the very beginning, because you always end up with that beginner's luck. I don't know what it is, but new traders always end up just striking that beginner's luck, and you think you know what you're doing, and then on that next go around, man, you lose everything.
You get nailed.
So that's, yeah. So that's pretty much what happened to me, starting off with trading. And as time evolved, I wanted to get better at trading, so I kind of started trying to learn, study, and got better over time. And then eventually, I was still working for the government. I was making my way around the globe pretty much. Ended up in Iraq, and I decided, you know what? I have all these systems in place for myself that I use. Why wouldn't I start bringing them to life? And when I was finally done working for the government, came back stateside, I just decided to, start building out some smaller tools to use for myself, and then kind of helping traders learn in time. And this is probably around the beginning of 2018. And at this point, I was pretty decent as a trader, and my tools that I was creating were actually being pretty successful. So I started releasing these tools to all these traders, and then I just realized that there was this demand for really, everything I was creating. And I talked to a buddy of mine, who's my business partner now, and we just decided to start up a company. And we really didn't have any clue what we were doing in the beginning, and it was, oh man, it was just a lot of trial by error. And, it's one thing to be in the leadership role for a fire department, even overseas in a combat zone, and it's what you're used to, and I found my success there. And so when I tried to do this in a company, it just didn't job the way that I was used to it working out in a fire department. So a lot of trial by error and a lot of mistakes were created, but in time, we pretty much started working everything out, got everything going the way we wanted to go, got our algorithms up and going, and then officially opened up the Transparent Traders Black Box, which is an algorithmic system, and we mostly focus on swing trading for the retail traders.
Nice. So I have so many questions starting in Antarctica. That sounds like it could be a whole podcast in and of itself. So I'll try to keep us on track. Tell me more about the technology. So this best thing is when you use something and it works for you, and then you go create it for others to use the same tool. But what exactly are these swing trades, and how does your technology help?
It's a list of mathematical formulas that I came up with, and I did have some help with some friends when I was actually in Iraq, just honestly true geniuses, and they kind of assisted me and guided me in my thought process through this basic process of elimination to really kind of home in my algorithm. And essentially what my algorithm can do is, for a swing trade, it truly is predictive. I can, look at my algorithm, and it could alert me that, hey, Apple is going to be, bearish. And that time frame that it usually falls in is within 2 weeks. And when these things start to alert bearish for a swing trade, pretty much what you have to do is just find your support and resistance and wait for it to break through that support in this instance, since it's bearish. And man, these things, when they start to move, they'll move 10, 15, 20 points at times. It's pretty crazy, but it's pretty accurate, and hey, it's been going great for us.
So your users can subscribe basically and see what those swing trades are, which direction they're heading, bullish or bearish, and based on that, they can place their options trades and know with some degree of confidence that they're going to be on the right side of that movement.
Yes, sir.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. So you've got this huge community. It must be working for them because you've got 20,000 plus social media followers. How did you get the word out that you had this tool and build that engaged community that wanted to work with you?
So in 2018, me and my buddy decided to officially open up a Facebook group called Transparent Traders. And it originally started off as a group of trolls. We were all trolls, but we were the good trolls. And I mean, I know that's probably, kind of an oxymoron, but we got tired of all the people on Twitter who were creating pump and dumps and just unloading on their followers. People who were just out to harm innocent investors for no reason at all, just to be, mean. That was it. And so we all just kind of grouped together, and we just started exposing all of those just bad actors in the industry. And I started up Transparent Traders, and that's what we were doing. We were just bringing light to these issues that were affecting the retail trading community, more as a awareness campaign. And then, people started wanting to know how to trade. So I started releasing free YouTube courses, which my first course was absolutely horrible. Like, I really thought that, I thought it was great. I thought it was, honestly going to be God's gift to the retail trading community. And when I look back on it now, I'm like so embarrassed of my production quality on YouTube. I'm just like, oh man, no wonder why no one watched it. So, in time we just kept helping retail traders out, and people started bringing in their friends, and that's really how we just grew. Up into the point where people were just like, hey, I want access to what you're using, what you're creating. And I was just like, okay. And we just opened up the company and started building our tools.
Wow, that's such a sincere way to go about it, because you're actually trying to help people, and you can build that trust. And then they come in and ask you for more. You don't have to push anything on them. They want to work with you. They want to learn.
Exactly. Yeah.
They want to take part in it. That's a great advice. I don't think you can really succeed at marketing without that sincerity, because nobody's going to really believe what you're peddling or believe what your message is. So tell us about the future of Transparent Traders. Where are you going to take it? You've got these algorithms. You've got this big community. Folks are using and investing and learning. What's next?
Okay, so my business plan, I actually have two phases. I've completed phase one, which, we know how Fintech is. You might be complete with the phase, but you still have your hands on it at all times. It's just, this industry just always evolves. It's crazy. But we're now approaching phase two, and that is us. We're going to open up our own social media network platform. And with this platform, we're going to call it Stockcast. With this platform, we're going to have it to where you get the social media aspect with groups. You can formulate your own group, run it how you choose, and you're going to have all the tools that you need for your research and due diligence. So, we're going to have anything that you pretty much think of for research. And that's the big picture for what we're striving for here, is to create a social network that gives you the community aspect while at the same time all the tools to help you find good trades.
I love that idea. It combines the social aspect that everyone is so excited about right now, using a community, using social media, with the traditional tools that an investor needs to do really fundamental and data-driven research, and puts those two things together. So that's incredibly exciting. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges of running a business right now? Everybody's bombarded with email. Things are always changing. We're on Zoom. Yeah. There's a pandemic going on. What's some of the lessons that you've learned that you think other fintech business leaders or business people in any industry really can learn that you've picked up on?
Oh, man. So with the whole pandemic, I'm not going to lie. I was terrified that, hey, this is it. We released our product on February the 3rd, 2020, and then the pandemic happened 2 weeks later.
Oh my gosh.
And I was like, oh my gosh, we're going under. We just started. This is my luck. We invested all this money to build this entire infrastructure, and now this pandemic is going to just crush us. And the opposite happened. And it was a surprise to all of us. We came out the gates and we were already making in the first week, we were making 5 figures of revenue.
Wow.
And every month, we've only had 2 months to where we actually had a slight pullback in revenue. Every month has just been growing. So there were some months it was doubling. I mean, so our growth has just been insane. But other entrepreneurs in the fintech industry, especially, should realize is, hey, you don't need a brick and mortar, an actual building that you have to sit in to create good products. Everything is digital now. Me and my business partners, we live across the entire country, and we all communicate online, usually through Zoom or something like that. Our product is 100% online, and that actually eliminates a lot of issues for a lot of entrepreneurs. Because back in the day, had this been the early 90s, and if you wanted to open up a company, you were going to have a physical building. So, just eliminating like an actual structure, that's just really the way that the world is changing now.
Yeah, it seemed like such a threat, I'm sure, at the time, but it actually turned out to be perfect timing and actually a much more streamlined way to run a business. I've got your website up here. It's transparenttradersblackbox.com. So if you want to learn more, go there and check it out. And I just want to say thanks so much, James, for being with us today. I'm super excited to see where you go next.
Andrew, thank you so much for having me on. And again, I've always enjoyed working with Intrinio. You guys have been great for me. You were my first data provider. Really, you guys have really helped me out tremendously.
Glad to hear it.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of FinTech What the Heck. Thanks to our sponsor, Intrinio, a financial data partner for innovators in finance. You can learn more at intrinio.com. I'm Andrew Carpenter, and I'll see you next time for more of what's new in FinTech.